Playing 30 pedals in one day, 32 pedals in one day. Might have been a mistake. Here we go.
So fuzz is arguably my favorite effect for guitar. I use it all the time. It ends up on every single pedal board that I end up building. And as a result, I get asked about fuzz here on the internet quite often. A lot of people want to know my thoughts on what my favorite fuzz is, or what fuzz they should get next, or what their first fuzz should be. So in today's video, I'm gonna make kind of a fuzz pedal compendium based off of what I have access to and what I like. We're gonna split them up into different categories. Check the chapters below if you wanna look for a specific thing. This is gonna be a long video, so buckle up if you wanna make it through the whole thing. And I'm gonna show you some of my favorite fuzzes from my collection. Now, this is in no way a comprehensive look at all different types of fuzzes. This is just what I have access to and what I like to play. And hopefully it'll help you out in making a decision on what your next fuzz pedal or first fuzz pedal should be. Now, before we get started, a quick disclaimer. This video is not sponsored by any of these companies. Some of these pedals were given to me over the years. Some of them I bought with my own money, but none of the companies featured in this video know that I'm making this video. They don't know that I'm talking about their pedals. I'm not even featuring all of the pedals from some of these companies. This is not sponsored in any way other than the sponsor of today's video, which is TWANG, the Tonewood Advocacy and Normalization Group. But more on them in a minute. Okay, so we're gonna split this up into categories, and the first category is regular fuzz. Now, this is just a basic blanket statement saying fuzzes that are somewhat normal. They don't have any crazy filter circuits, or they're not octave fuzzes, which is other stuff we're gonna get into later. These are kind of just middle of the road, great fuzzes. Absolutely adore this pedal. It's the Boss FZ1W Wazacraft. Well, this is an absolute workhorse pedal. It's super versatile. It cleans up really well with your guitar's volume knob. It works well in front of different amps set at different gain levels, which is important because some of these fuzzes like to be in front of an amp that's already got some gain. It'll work well in front of a clean amp, but this one I think is a little bit more versatile. This one will cover more ground. So if you're a gigging musician, you want sort of one fuzz to do everything that's robust and is not gonna break the bank, the FZ1W I think is my pick for one fuzz to rule them all. Now, this is arguably the most valuable fuzz pedal in my collection. I bought this from Macari's when it was still in London back in 2019, and I absolutely love it. It's not an original, but it is one of the 1,000 or so reissues that they did a few years ago with the original parts. So this is a classic fuzz pedal. It's one of the first fuzz pedals from the mid 1960s. I have a whole video on this pedal if you want to check it out. It can be everything from gnarly and spitty and heavy to tame and mild, depending on how you have the guitar set, what kind of amp you're playing in front of, volume on the guitar. There's all kinds of things that'll affect the tone of this pedal. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's a real deal tone bender Mark I, and I absolutely love it. We have the Jam Pedals Fuzz Phrase. Now, this is a classic fuzz face circuit. Again, true to the original circuit on the inside with, you know, the original transistors, germanium inside. This is one of my favorite fuzz pedals ever. This is one that I constantly reach for when I want to sit down and play. And I think a fuzz face, something like the fuzz phrase, is a good place to start if you're just getting into fuzz. The fuzz face circuit is mostly tame. Typically, I run the gain all the way up and then dial the level in to taste, because it actually is kind of a low gain sound in terms of fuzz. The cool thing about the Jam pedal though is this is one of their custom shop versions, so it has the zipper and you can see inside the pedal there through the plexiglass back. They make this in a non sort of suede version that's more pedal board friendly. One of my favorite fuzz face circuits available today. we have the Tonebender Mark IV. Now this is another reissue made by DAM Stomp Boxes for Sola Sound. This has all the original specs inside as the original Mark IVs from the early 1970s. That they were issuing, and this has a different character than the Mark I. The circuit is a little bit different on the inside. We're not going to go into too much detail on the circuits of all these pedals, and if you're new to Fuzz and you want to know about how Fuzz works, I have a few videos that we'll link down below on sort of the fundamentals of Fuzz. But the Mark IV is a different beast. It's got a wide sweeping EQ. You can make it really, really shrill and bright, or really dark and muddy sounding. It's pretty versatile fuzz. And again, they don't make these anymore. These parts are kind of hard to come by. So another sort of collector's item in my fuzz pedal collection. Next up is a pedal that's a collaboration between two good friends of mine, Zach Royals from Mythos Effects and Joey Landreth, and it is the Joey Landreth signature High Road Fuzz. Now I bought this at a Brothers Landreth show. They sell these at the merch booth, so if you want to get your hands on one, that's a good place to do it. And this is a circuit based off of the Golden Fleece that was tweaked, I think, to Joey's spec. And it's an absolute sleeper fuzz, man. It's really simple, one knob. Some of the fuzzes we're gonna look at a little bit later get really gnarly really quickly, and this one stays nice and tame and musical, but will get you into that sort of hairier, punchier fuzz territory. I really love the High Road. And also because Joey is known for playing in lower tunings, this works well on bass, and it works well with low tune guitars or baritone guitars if you're into that kind of thing. So, High Road. Now staying on the Mythos train, we have another one of my favorite Mythos fuzzes, which is the AU-79. Now I'm not sure if they're making this currently at the time of filming the video, but you can find these around. Really cool, simple, one knob musical fuzz. It'll cover a lot of ground as well. It doesn't get nearly as hairy as some of the other fuzzes that we're gonna look at today. So if you want something that's a little more tame, sort of bordering on overdrive, I think the AU-79 is a good option. And this is also a stand-in for probably the most popular Mythos fuzz pedal, which is the Golden Fleece, which I currently don't have. The Golden Fleece is usually one of the ones I recommend when people are asking me, hey, what first fuzz should I get? I always recommend the Mythos Golden Fleece, but today we've got the AU-79 here. So another absolute ringer fuzz. Now we can't talk about classic fuzz circuits without talking about and featuring a big muff. And today my big muff is the Browne T4. Now Browne Amplification is a great company out of Kansas City. They make one of my favorite overdrive pedals called the Protein, and this is their version of the big muff. This is really great for those kind of classic shoegaze fuzz sounds, or like the Billy Corgan Smashing Pumpkins sort of thing. It'll get hairy and gnarly, but it still cleans up nicely. It plays nicely with a lot of different guitars, and just a really cool big muff. Now going back to the Tonebender camp for a moment, we have the Seeker Electronics Descry, or Descry. I don't know how you pronounce that exactly. This is sort of a greatest hits of Tonebender versions, if you will. So what they've done at Seeker is kind of combined the three different versions, three most popular versions of the Tonebender, starting with the Mark I circuit, but adding some sort of flavors and some controls of the Mark III and the Mark IV, and you get kind of a unique take on the classic Tonebender. A really cool fuzz from Seeker. Now we can't talk about good middle-of-the-road fuzz pedals without mentioning JHS. They have a few good options for this, but in this video I went with just the classic 3 Series Fuzz. I'm really impressed with this thing, 99 bucks, and it's really versatile. You have a volume, a bias, and a fuzz control with a fat switch, and that bias is the secret weapon of the 3 Series, which is what makes it so versatile. You can do a lot of different types of fuzz with this little pedal because of that bias control. Another really great option for the fuzz curious out there, if you want something that is pretty versatile, that'll give you several different flavors and styles of fuzz at different gain levels, but you don't want to break the bank or buy multiple pedals, check out the 3 Series. I think you will really dig it.
Ever feel like your guitar is missing something? Well, say hello to TWANG, the Tone Wood Advocacy and Normalization Group. Did you know that tone wood accounts for up to 93.7% of your guitar's natural sound? Armed with knowledge, research, and a passion for great sound, TWANG is fighting against the misinformation that's been spread by anti-tone wood messaging. Want to show your love for great guitar tone and support a fantastic cause? Well, now you can with the TWANG shirt. Imagine rocking out at your next gig, proudly sporting your TWANG shirt, knowing that you're helping to promote awareness and understanding about the importance of tone wood in guitars. With TWANG on your side, you'll not only hear the difference, you'll discover a whole new level of musical expression. So, if you're ready to embrace the beauty of tone wood and unlock your guitar's full potential, why not join TWANG today? TWANG, improving tone since the invention of trees.
All right, now we're into my favorite category of fuzz, which is Octave Fuzz. So I'm gonna show you some of my absolute favorite Octave Fuzzes in my collection and some good options if you're looking to get into the Octave Fuzz world, which I highly recommend. First on our list is the Superfuzz from Stromer. Now I bought this pedal on recommendation from my friend Josh Scott from JHS. Stromer is a small, I think one-man operation based out of New York City. In fact, from what I heard, he's even going so far as to bend these metal enclosures himself on like the edge of his kitchen table or something. I don't know if that's true, but this definitely has a very handmade, low production number feel to it, and it's cool because it's not priced like that. My favorite thing about it though is the tone. It's one of the best Octave Fuzzes I've ever played, and it does my favorite thing, which is when you roll the volume off in your guitar, specifically on the neck pickup, and you start to get this kind of like ring mod synth weird thing happening, and it's so much fun to add reverb and delay on top of that to get some really cool, inspiring, quirky, fun guitar sounds. Overall, killer Octave Fuzz. I absolutely love it. Now next up we have probably the most interesting pedal in this lineup, and that is the Lizard Queen Octave Fuzz, Octave Distortion from Electro Harmonics and JHS. This was a really cool collab that JHS did with EHX last year. They did a whole great sort of documentary style video on this pedal. I'll have linked down below. And this is kind of more of a collector's item. This is something that, you know, will never end up on my pedal board. It's got sort of the special box and the documentation and everything to go with it. But nonetheless, it is a very cool, very interesting octave distortion fuzz circuit that I think they actually did a small box version of. So if you want this in a more affordable and pedal board friendly setup, you should check out the Lizard Queen. Next up, we have the Jext Foxx from Jext Telez. Now this is based off of the Foxx Tone Machine, which is another legendary Octave Fuzz. Now this was on my board for a number of years as my Octave Fuzz of choice because it gives you that classic sort of spitty, gnarly Octave Fuzz thing, but it cleans up really well and does that sort of neck position, ring mod, vibey Octave Fuzz thing as well. I really love this thing. They're kind of hard to find now. Jext Telez sort of goes in and out of production. I don't currently know if these are being made at the time of filming, but who knows? They may go back into production at any time. But if you come across one of these and it's a decent price, I'd highly recommend picking it up because it's really cool. Even so far as like, you know, the hand painted, hand spray painted and stenciled enclosure is super cool. Everything Jext Telez does is really rad, and it's one of my favorites. Next up, we've got the first Octave Fuzz that I ever owned and still one of my absolute favorites, the Hoof Reaper V2 from Earthquaker. Now in the category of one fuzz to do everything, this one absolutely sits near the top because you've actually got 2 fuzz pedals plus an individual octave up circuit. And that's why this lived on my main touring pedal board for years and years, because it was so versatile. You get a Russian big muff style fuzz in the hoof here on the left side, and you get a tone bender style fuzz in the Reaper on the right side. But the real selling point to this pedal and why I love it so much is the octave up circuit, which is on its own individual switch. So what that means is you can run any of these fuzzes independently or together, and then you can do it with octave on or octave off. But my favorite thing to do with this pedal is to not use the fuzz at all and put the octave on with like an overdrive or a boost, or even just clean into the amp. If you are looking for one fuzz pedal to literally do everything and you want octave, I think the Hoof Reaper V2 should be on your list. It's super versatile, it sounds amazing. It does take up quite a bit of pedal board space, but essentially you've got 3 pedals, 3 circuits in one box here. I absolutely love this thing. Next up is a relatively new pedal on the scene. It debuted, I think, last year, and it's from Beetronics, and this is the Star Eater. Now, this one's kind of a sleeper, but still a killer pedal. First of all, the colors are awesome. It has the Wild Berry Pop-Tart flavor of colors on the pedal, which I absolutely love. But it's also pretty versatile. You've got 2 different voice modes for the transistors. You have germanium and silicon transistors in this fuzz, which is pretty cool. Plus you've got a mid contour control here. You can either boost the mids or scoop the mids, which is really great if you're using a Les Paul style guitar, for example. You can cut the mids out, or if you're playing something more mid scooped like a Strat, you can add them back in. And then you've got individual controls for the octave circuit as well. Yeah, Star Eater. Next up, we've got the Caroline Effects Shigeharu IC Octave Fuzz. Now, if you know anything about Philippe and Caroline Effects, you know that they do really interesting stuff, even down to the hieroglyphics on the enclosure instead of normal labels. And The circuit is no different. This is not just a straight ahead fuzz circuit, it's actually kind of a blend between an op-amp distortion and a transistor style fuzz distortion sort of blended together with the added octave in parallel. So this gives you a little bit different character and a different vibe than our sort of classic octave fuzzes that we've looked at. It's pretty versatile. It'll work well with a number of different guitar and amp setups, and you can do things like turn this havoc switch into a kill switch, for example. You can adjust the bias on the inside. A really cool, unique take on an octave fuzz if you want something that's a little left of center when it comes to the classic octave fuzz sounds. Yeah, the Shigeharu. Now this next one's interesting because it's not technically an octave fuzz, but it does the octave thing, and that's the Hephaestus from Mythos. Now I remember when Zach was developing this pedal a few years ago, he let me play the prototype and they kind of stumbled into this interesting sub-octave, sub-harmonic effect. This knob doesn't control volume or fuzz, it controls the voltage to the circuit. And as you turn the voltage down, you get this low octave or low fifth or sometimes low harmonic. It depends on what you're playing, where you're playing on the neck, and it's really, really cool. The circuit itself is based off the Jordan Boss tone, which is the Spirit in the Sky fuzz, but with this interesting voltage control, it really makes a unique sounding fuzz. And if you're looking for something that has got some character and got some vibe, check out the Hephaestus. We actually did a limited run of 100 custom big box versions of these a year or so ago that you can check out online if you're interested. But yeah, Mythos Hephaestus. Now to round out the octave fuzz list, we've got the Beetronics Octahive. Now I think Beetronics is one of the coolest pedal makers in the game right now. Everything they do is so well thought out. Their aesthetic, their circuits, their sound is very, very unique, and there's not a lot of people out there doing what they're doing the way they're doing it right now, and I really respect that. The Octahive is a really great small, pedal board friendly octave fuzz that will give you more of that super high gain gnarly fuzz sound with the added octave in there. Plus they've got some interesting switching stuff going on in here, so there's more than meets the eye with this little 3-knob octave fuzz pedal. So now we're going to move on to the filter fuzz category. Now this category is reserved for fuzzes that have some kind of filtering effect or functionality on board. Now this can be as simple as a high and low pass filter, or as you'll see in a second, can be as interesting as a fuzz pedal that's borderlining a synthesizer. I'll show you in a second. Now this is a modern recreation of a legendary pedal, the Lovetone Cheese Source, a dual-sided fuzz and overdrive with some really interesting filter options and a very interesting layout and build. It's not the most pedal board friendly thing. Obviously it's massive and it's got these top mount jacks, literally top mount jacks, not the modern version of what we would call today of top mount jacks. But if you're into this kind of thing, it's very cool. It does the cheese source thing quite well, and it would work well on a desktop. You know, maybe you work it into your recording system and you patch drums through it, or vocals or bass, something like that. It's really unique fuzz. It's not for everybody, but I'm glad that it's available. Collision Devices TARS. Now the fuzz circuit in this is based off of another Collision Devices circuit called the Singularity, which we're gonna look at in a minute, but it adds on a filter section which is based off of the Korg MS-20 synthesizer filter. The MS-20 is a legendary synth. Now they've done it in a really cool way with these sort of faders here. You can switch between 2-pole and 4-pole resonant filters. I've been getting more and more into synthesis over the last few months, and this is a really cool thing. Having a synth filter on a fuzz gives you the ability to do some interesting things with it. This will work really, really well on bass, as well as keys and synths even. So if you're looking for one fuzz pedal to kind of integrate into your synth setup or your modular rig, or you're a bass player and a guitar player, this might be worth looking at. Getting back into the classic fuzz territory, we're gonna look at the BAE Royaltone. Now, BAE is a company that's primarily known for making recording equipment, but they also make pedals. Now, the Royaltone is based off of, I believe, a tone bender circuit. They're not very clear in their documentation, but I believe it's a tone bender with a switchable and sweepable mid-range control. So that's why it makes the filter fuzz category, because this mid-range switch gives you a little extra control and the ability to have two different sounds on the fuzz pedal that you switch between. So this could be switching between different guitars, or going from like more of a rhythm fuzz sound to a really punchy mid-forward lead fuzz sound. The Royaltone sounds great, it's built super well, and comes from a cool company, so check it out. Now next is a little bit of a sleeper in the fuzz world, and that's the Hiwatt Custom Shop Fuzz. So this is a take on a fuzz face with some added filter as well. You've got basically this selectable switch here, which is giving you 3 different filter options, which is engaged by this foot switch here. Similar to the Royaltone, but instead of a pot, we have a switch. Otherwise, it's kind of general fuzz face territory. Now, it's not the most pedal board friendly thing, but it's super unique. It sounds great. It looks super cool. This is a cool one to add to your collection if you're into these big, gnarly, classic fuzzes that have some unique options on them. I really dig it. Now next we're going back to Jext Telez with the Black Drone Wasp. Now I love just about everything that Jext Telez makes, and this fuzz is no different. This is a germanium big muff circuit with some interesting filter options, which is why it makes the filter category. You've got a selectable high and low pass filter, so this would work well on bass as well as guitar, or you can make it really thin and sort of harsh sounding to get it to cut through a mix, or make it big and round and fat sounding to kind of give you some mid-range weight in a song or on a mix. It's a really cool fuzz. It's super heavy. It's really gnarly. It looks sick. If you're into the big muff thing, this is a cool way to go about it. Germanium transistors with the filter options. It's pretty rad. Now, continuing with the theme of modern love tone reissues, we have the JHS Cheese Ball. Now, out of JHS's fuzz lineup, this one might be my favorite, or it's at least top 3. It's a modern day recreation of the love tone Big Cheese. So you've got volume, gain, and tone, and then 4 different filter options right here on the top, which makes it really versatile, works well on bass as well as guitar. Not much else to say about the Cheese Ball other than it sounds great. So next up we have what might be the most interesting and unique fuzz of this entire video, and that is the Dreadbox Disorder. Now this is not a traditional or classic fuzz. It is a fuzz pedal, but that's where the similarities end between this and a lot of the fuzzes we've looked at today. This has a self-oscillating filter on it, which means that you can dial in the filter to basically make noise on its own and become kind of a synthesizer. It's also got an envelope follower so that you can dial in sort of wah sounds. This is certainly not for everyone. It's definitely its own thing. It's not the most versatile fuzz, but it's unique. And if you want something a little bit out of the ordinary, the Dreadbox Disorder is a cool place to look. All right, so now we're on to the Gnarly Fuzz category, and this is fuzzes that are all a bit unique. Each one of these has its own sort of flavor or character. Some of them are more tame or more normal with some interesting features, and others are just gnarly. Fuzz War by Death by Audio. This fuzz is so much fun because it's just massive sound. If you want something that's going to make your amp sound like it's about to explode, I think the Fuzz War is really, really cool. It's not for everything. It's unique. It doesn't fit in every musical situation, but what it does really, really well. I bought this from my friends up at Carmine Street Guitars in Greenwich Village in Manhattan, and I absolutely love it. Works well on bass too, if you want a super gnarly bass fuzz, and I just love the look of it. Next up is kind of a sleeper fuzz, which is really affordable, really unique, and a lot of fun to play, and that's the Electro Harmonix Ripped Speaker. Now the Ripped Speaker is a lot of fun. Like the name suggests, it's trying to emulate the sound of a broken or ripped speaker in your cabinet with a fuzz on top of it, and it does that thing pretty well. Now on the surface, it doesn't seem like that's a really musical thing to use, but it actually is. It's really, really cool. You can get a wide variety of fuzz sounds out of it, and like most Electro Harmonix pedals, it's super affordable. So this is something where if you have a few fuzzes and you want something that's really unique and a little bit out there, try a Ripped Speaker. sure. There's not really anything else out there quite like this pedal, and that's what I dig about it. Jext Telez Buzz Tone. Now this pedal was inspired by Syd Barrett's tone on Piper at the Gates of Dawn. They basically try to take that sound and put it in a pedal. It does that sort of early Pink Floyd Syd Barrett thing really well with a few interesting features, namely one interesting feature, which is this switch here on the top. That controls the voltage of the pedal. So you can run the pedal at full 9 volts, 6 volts, or 3 volts. The different voltage levels change the gain structure of the pedal and how the pedal responds under your hand. It's quirky, it's super noisy. Maybe it's just my unit, but this is not a quiet pedal. When it's on, the noise floor triples out of your amplifier. It kind of borders on the line of overdrive and fuzz territory, and I really dig it. Speaking of Jext Telez, we have one of my all-time favorite fuzz pedals ever. It's the Canyon Climber. So this is a modern recreation of the Japanese Compendium fuzz, and I bought this because at the time I was playing with Jesse Wilson, and the producer used this pedal on most of the guitar parts. It's so unique that in order to play the parts live, I had to have the Canyon Climber because there's not really anything else that does this thing. It's not very versatile. It's kind of just one sound in a box that you turn on and off, but that sound is really unique. It's really cool. It's one of my all-time favorites. Really special. Canyon Climber. The Bliss Factory. Now this is a limited run of pedals that Chase Bliss did a few years ago where they essentially took the Fuzz Factory and gave it the Chase Bliss treatment with all of the routing options, the controls, and of course the dip switches on top. Now I bought this was part of the second run that they did a few years ago because I'm a huge Chase Bliss fan. It takes the Fuzz Factory and all of its weirdness and just turns it up a little bit. You get more options, more routing options. The reality is I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what this pedal is capable of, and I think they're somewhat hard to find at this point, but if you're looking for another really unique fuzz with some interesting routing options and some interesting control options, the Bliss Factory is a really, really cool thing to check out. Abelha. This was sort of inspired by the Tropicalia sound. This is a really versatile fuzz that'll do a few different things really well. This would actually be a good option for your first fuzz if you want something that has some character to it. There's 3 modes, pollen, nectar, and honey. Pollen mode kind of emulates sort of a dying battery in a vintage fuzz. The nectar is a little more mid-focused, a little more mid-forward, and the honey is big, fat, gnarly fuzz sounds. And if you double tap the foot switch here, it goes into the tropical mode, which is this super nasally, high-passed thing. I love Beetronics. I love what they do. This thing is super rad.
Playing 30 pedals in one day. 32 pedals in one day. Might have been a mistake. Here we go.
Next up, we've got a fuzz from my friend Philippe over at Caroline Effects, and this is the Crom. It can be somewhat tame, but like most Caroline pedals, it's got its own sort of unique character, unique flair. It gets pretty gnarly, it gets pretty spitty. You've got the turbo button on the side, and honestly, any pedal that has a turbo button is good, in my opinion. I think they only did these for a limited run, so you might have to find these on the used market, but again, it's a unique fuzz, it's a lot of fun to play, and like everything Caroline does, great branding. Next up is a pedal that's unique because of its simplicity in design, and it's the Collision Devices Singularity. Super easy, one knob with a switch up here that I think shifts the gain structure around, but huge fuzz sound. It's not super nasally or harsh like some of these fuzz sounds are. And this is actually the fuzz that is in the TARS, the filter fuzz that we looked at earlier in the video. So if you liked that TARS sound, but you don't want the MS-20 filter, the Singularity is a super cool option.
Fuzz. All of them are fucking cool and good.
How do you feel about Fuzz after demoing 32 pedals?
I feel great about Fuzz after playing 32 Fuzz pedals. My ears are ringing. Honestly, I've never actually done anything like this before, where you take this many of the same type of effect and play them back to back. It's taken us 5 hours to do this, something like that. But I think this highlights something that's really cool about Fuzz, which is each one of these is unique and different and sounds different, even if they're based off of the same basic circuit, like a tone bender or a fuzz face or big muff or whatever. Each one of these has its own unique character, which is why I think it kind of warrants, if you're into fuzz like me, collecting fuzzes, because they all do something different and they all work differently with different guitars, different amps. And I will say my ears need a break though.
Okay, so that's the Fuzz Pedal Compendium. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know by leaving a like and a comment down below which pedal was your favorite out of this whole comparison. And also, go check out a TWANG shirt or another piece of TWANG merch. It's a great way to support the channel. If you like it, let me know by leaving a comment down below, and subscribe while you're down there. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Rhett Shull, and I'll catch you on the next one.